Welcome back to the deep dive. So AI is expanding at, just a blinding speed right now.
It really is.
And if you're still lumping everything with the word intelligence into, one giant category, you are already missing out.
Absolutely.
For anyone looking to leverage this power effectively, the sources we've gathered are, well, they're crystal clear on this. A nuanced, a really precise understanding of AI's different branches. It's just not optional anymore.
It's true. We're well past the point where AI was just a tool for, say, analyzing data.
Right.
We are seeing this fundamental shift. AI is moving from just creating content, which is fascinating enough on its own, to making these complex autonomous decisions out in the real world.
Yeah.
And those two functions, they rely on completely different architectures.
So that's our mission for today. To provide that clarity, we are doing a deep dive into the two most critical domains that are driving innovation right now. Generative AI and Agentic AI.
The creator and the doer.
Exactly. We need to understand the core distinctions, see the practical applications, and, figure out when you should choose one over the other.
I think a good way to frame it is this. One branch of AI is focused on, let's call it synthesis and imagination.
Okay.
It creates things that did not exist before. The other is focused on perception, planning, and execution. And all in a constantly changing environment.
So it's the difference between asking an AI to write a perfect novel and asking it to manage an entire factory floor.
Or navigate rush hour traffic.
Yeah.
We really need to unpack this shift.
Okay, let's start with generative AI, the creator. This is probably the one most people are familiar with, thanks to things like ChatGPT or image generators like Midjourney. At its core, generative AI is all about creation. It's producing entirely new content, whether that's text or images or even audio and code.
And what's so fascinating about it is how it creates. It isn't just, mashing existing things together. It studies these massive amounts of data to understand the deep underlying patterns and structures within them. It learns the statistical language of that data, and then it generates something completely original that just sort of adheres to those rules.
Something totally new, but based on that learned context.
Exactly.
That sounds like just an overwhelming training process. When we talk about the mechanisms, we always hear the jargon, right? Deep learning, neural networks.
And transformer models.
And crucially, transformer models. What makes that transformer architecture so revolutionary for creation?
Well, the real breakthrough lies in something called the attention mechanism.
The attention mechanism.
Right. Yeah. Before transformers, AI models. Yeah. They had a really terrible time holding on to context, especially across long streams of data.
They would just forget.
They'd often forget the beginning of a sentence by the time they reached the end. It was a huge limitation.
So how does this attention thing fix that? How does it manage that kind of awareness across just petabytes of information?
Okay, think of it like a very efficient editor who's reading a 500-page book.
Okay.
Instead of treating every single word equally, the attention mechanism selectively highlights, say, the 10% of the document that is most relevant to the current task.
Like writing the very next sentence.
Exactly. And it ensures the system focuses its creative energy right there. This allows it to capture these really intricate, long-range relationships in the data. And that is absolutely crucial for generating coherent, sophisticated stuff like a full article or a complex piece of code.
And the scale of training that enables this, it's staggering. We're talking about adjusting millions, sometimes billions of parameters.
Billions. And that alone really dictates the current landscape.
How so?
Well, the sources we looked at really underscored this point. The sheer expense and computational power you need to adjust all those billions of parameters.
Right.
That's what creates such a high barrier to entry for developing these huge models.
But the payoff is immense.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
That scale allows for this incredibly robust, flexible creation that can synthesize ideas across so many different domains.
Okay, let's talk about the wow factor, especially for businesses. Beyond the obvious creative stuff generating scripts, music, unique dialogue, how are companies actually leveraging this creation engine?
Okay, look at marketing optimization.
Right.
A human team might spend, days crafting 5 different versions of an ad copy for A/B testing. A generative AI can spit out 1,000 variations, each one tailored to specific psychological triggers or demographics, in minutes.
That level of rapid prototyping, for text or even product designs is just, it's unprecedented.
It is.
And I'm seeing it with SEO scalability too.
Oh, for sure.
Instead of paying writers to just churn out hundreds of basic articles for long-tail keywords, a generative system can produce those foundational pieces much faster. And that frees up human writers to focus on the really high-value, nuanced content.
It completely transforms the workflow. It streamlines that bulk process. At the end of the day, generative AI is the ultimate synthesis engine for content.
Right. It takes the patterns, synthesizes them into new forms to fulfill a prompt.
But then it stops.
It stops there. It doesn't then, go out into the world and execute a physical task based on that content.
And that very distinction brings us to the next big domain, Agentic AI.
Right. So if generative AI is the artist in the studio, Agentic AI is the operative out in the field. This is that shift from creation to pure independent action.
Yeah, Agentic AI is all about its ability to perceive, plan, and execute actions to achieve a goal. And the key is it does this on its own in real time.
So it's not just responding to one prompt.
No, not at all. It's functioning as this independent entity that understands its surroundings, makes choices, and takes action to get to its goal without needing constant step-by-step human guidance.
That definitely sounds a lot more complicated than creating text. If it's acting in the real world, the whole system architecture must be completely different.
It has to be.
It needs to know how to interact with the physical world or, a super dynamic data stream.
It absolutely does. The architecture relies on this critical feedback loop, and that involves hardware. First, you have the sensors.
The system's eyes and ears.
Exactly. They're constantly collecting real-world data cameras, thermal imaging, microphones, and crucially for something like a self-driving car, LiDAR and radar.
And just to clarify for our listener, LiDAR and radar, they aren't just fancy cameras, right?
Not at all. They're essential for perception in a dynamic world. LiDAR uses laser pulses to measure distance and map the environment in 3D.
Okay.
While radar uses radio waves to detect speed and range, which is especially useful in, say, bad weather, this sensor data feeds the AI model an instant, real-time awareness of the world around it.
And once the AI decides what to do, it needs a way to actually do it. It needs a physical capability.
That's where the actuators come in.
The hands and feet.
Hands and feet, yeah. They're the physical components that translate the AI's decision into movement. In a car, that's the steering, the brakes. In a factory, it's the robotic arm or the motor on a conveyor belt. The AI decides. The actuator does.
Okay, this raises a really crucial point that separates it from generative AI. You can train a generative model on a static, fixed data set of text.
Right.
But how do you train an autonomous car to handle something it has literally never seen before, like a sudden pileup or a deer jumping onto the road? You can't just feed it a static data set of every possible traffic nightmare.
You can't. And that's where reinforcement learning, or RL, comes in. It is the core learning mechanism for agentic AI.
Okay.
So instead of being fed huge amounts of labeled data, the RL agent learns through experience, a lot like how a human or an animal learns a complex skill.
Can you give us an analogy for how that reward system works in practice?
Sure. Imagine you're training a dog to fetch a ball. You don't give it a manual with step-by-step instructions.
Yeah, of course not.
Instead, you wait for it to do something. If the dog moves toward the ball, you give it a reward, a treat, praise. If it runs the wrong way, nothing, no reward.
And over time, it just figures it out.
Slowly, through hundreds of trials and errors, it learns the optimal sequence of actions it needs to take to maximize that reward.
So the agentic AI is constantly trying to maximize its reward function in real time.
That's it, exactly. For an autonomous vehicle, the reward is staying in a lane, keeping a safe distance, reaching the destination. The penalty is hitting the curb or braking too late, or worse.
And it just practices millions of times.
Millions of times in simulation, getting rewards and penalties, and constantly refining its strategy to execute that goal perfectly.
And the applications for this kind of action in motion are they're everywhere. We see the autonomous vehicles, which obviously need that instant, flexible decision-making.
But look further. Think about financial trading algorithms. They are a prime example of agentic AI.
How so?
They continuously study real-time market conditions, price action, order book depth, news sentiment, and they autonomously execute buy-or-sell orders based on these really complex preset strategies. They act, they get immediate feedback, profit or loss, and they adapt instantly.
What about something like robotic process automation that's mostly software-based? How does that qualify as agentic?
It qualifies because the software is acting independently in a dynamic environment. In this case, that environment is a complex business workflow.
Okay.
An agentic RPA system might observe that every time a request goes from, say, Department A to Department B, it gets stuck.
A bottleneck.
A bottleneck. It's waiting for a specific sign-off.
Huh.
The agent identifies this, and then it autonomously modifies the workflow. Maybe it auto-sends a reminder or reroutes minor tasks. Then it monitors the results. It's perceiving, planning, and executing to achieve a goal, which is efficiency, all without a human stepping in.
That independence is what's so valuable. It's the ability to pivot instantly based on unexpected feedback in these ever-changing environments.
That is the key distinction. Generative AI creates based on learned patterns. Agentic AI acts based on perceived reality and maximizing its goal.
Okay, so we have the creator and the doer. Let's bring this all together. Let's really synthesize the differences because this is the clarity that you, our listener, really need for strategic application.
The essential distinction, and this comes from the core principles in all the sources, it really boils down to the environment and the output.
Okay.
Generative AI focuses on creation in what we'd call a static environment. The data it trained on is fixed. The prompt you give it is fixed. It's like an artist in a studio responding to a commission.
Whereas agentic AI is all about action and decision-making in a dynamic, real-world environment.
Right.
The input is changing every millisecond, the market moves, the traffic changes, a robot script slips. It's constantly adjusting to reality.
And we can detail the 4 big operational differences that define this contrast. First, output type.
Generative AI creates content.
And agentic AI performs actions.
Simple enough. Second, the environment they operate in. Generative systems handle controlled, predictable data inputs like files or text blocks.
While agentic systems have to interact with dynamic, often chaotic, real-world environments.
Third is the fundamental goal.
The goal for generative AI is, well, it's just generation, creating text or images.
And for agentic AI, it's much more complex. It's goal-directed behavior, achieving an objective out there in the world.
Whether that's delivering a package or maximizing stock returns.
And finally, number 4, the feedback loop is completely different.
Completely. Generative models respond to a prompt, and you might give it some iterative feedback. But agentic systems, thanks to that reinforcement learning we talked about,
Right.
they rely on continuous, immediate adaptation based on environmental feedback. If it makes a move that results in a penalty, it adjusts its strategy for the very next action.
And yet these two fields are not. They're not enemies.
Not at all. They're highly complementary. And this is where you get a powerful hybrid approach, where the lines really start to blur in some powerful ways.
Let's explore that. How can an agentic AI use generative capabilities to get smarter?
Well, the primary use right now is for communication.
For explaining itself.
For explaining itself, exactly. An agentic system, let's say a logistics planner, might take an action based on millions of data points, and the result is a routing choice a human just couldn't easily follow.
It's not intuitive.
It's not intuitive.
Yeah.
So it then uses generative AI to create a detailed, human-readable report explaining why it chose that specific path. The agent acts, and then it creates the explanation.
And what about the other way around? How does generative AI benefit from agentic principles?
It benefits immensely. Instead of just creating content and stopping, it can use that continuous feedback loop from agentic systems, tracking user engagement, click-through rates, time on page, you name it, to constantly refine its own output.
So when a generative system uses those continuous interactions to modify its own internal parameters for better performance later on.
It's acting as an agent of its own optimization.
That's fascinating.
This blending of independent action and creation is genuinely where the next major leaps are going to happen.
So what does this all mean for you? Well, understanding this distinction empowers you to look at your specific needs with real clarity. Are you looking for creative scalability, maybe internal content optimization, a synthesis of ideas?
It's generative.
Or do you need autonomous execution in a dynamic external environment that requires real-time decision-making?
What's agentic?
That differentiation creation versus goal-directed autonomous execution, that is the key strategic takeaway.
It is. AI is no longer a monolith. Recognizing whether you need an artist or whether you need an independent operative, that dictates your entire investment and application strategy moving forward.
And that leads us to the final provocative thought we took away from these sources. We have seen AI move from being just a tool for creation to becoming an independent actor in the world. So what happens when these systems become so advanced that the lines between creative generation and goal-directed action fully blur?
When they start doing both at once.
When they start acting and creating. designing their own novel objectives and then executing them in the real world, all without human intervention. That level of self-directed, hybrid intelligence where the artist becomes the architect. That is the true next frontier we all need to start preparing for.